So the second lesson of the resources unit is just about summarising all the different types of resources, and this picture on the first slide serves to remind us that resources are not just things that we use to make electricity and things like that. Resources are things that we drink, things that we eat, things that we grow, things that we use in everyday life. Resources are so numerous that we don't have time to name them all. Now, remember, the future of our society, if you will, is going to be affected quite vastly by our use of resources, by our shortage of resources, and this is something here that we looked at just at the end of last lesson. So a quick reminder about how we don't know where we're going to be in the next 50 years. In your lifetimes, things are going to change very, very drastically indeed for a whole number of reasons. For instance, here there's developmental reasons. Countries like China and India are growing at such a rate. As they grow, they demand and use more resources. On the other side of the coin, there's food riots and riots and unrest that are caused by lack of resources, particularly in LEDCs. So it's very important to be able to have some sort of opinion about where we're going to be in 50 years time or 100 years time, and just try and base your ideas on that of either Boserup or Malthus, the two people that we looked at last lesson. Okay, as I mentioned already, when we talk about resources, we talk mainly and we think mainly about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are what? They are coal, they are oil, they are gas. Why are they called fossil fuels? Well, fossils are the imprints of dead animals and dead plants found in rocks all over the world. And fossil fuels are called fossil fuels because coal, oil and gas are created by dead biological matter, by dead plants, by dead animals, by dead sea creatures. Over the course of millions of years, they turn into coal, oil and gas. Coal is mainly dead plants and dead animals from not animals, just dead plants and trees from millions of years ago, which have gradually turned into coal. Oil and gas are primarily, particularly oil, is primarily dead sea creatures, dead fish. So the key thing to remember is that oil is used in a whole number of different ways, and we'll come back to that in a later lesson. But resources can also be put into other categories as well. Here we've got renewable, non-renewable and sustainable. Very, very important that you understand the meanings of these three terms. I can guarantee in some way, shape or form it will come up in one of your exams. So non-renewable, for instance, coal. Once it's used, it can't be replaced. Renewable, for instance, wind power or solar power. It doesn't run out. It's a source of energy, and it's a source of a resource that will not finish until the planet Earth does. And then we've got sustainable resources, sustainable energy. Now it's very important to see the difference between sustainable and renewable, because for something to be sustainable, remember, it needs to be economically viable. It needs to be good for local people. It needs to also be good for the environment. Now wind power, for instance, isn't necessarily sustainable. It's very, very expensive, and there's a lot of social pressure against it in a lot of countries. Biogas, for instance, though, is something that can be done on a small scale, on a local level, and it's used quite widely in places like India, where the gas from dead matter, dead plants, dead food, even dead animal carcasses, the gas is collected, that gas is then burnt, and it's used as a resource. So very, very important to know the difference between sustainable and renewable resources. Typical exam question here, description of the different trends in our usage of fossil fuels. As you can see, oil, natural gas and coal are all on the way up. Oil is by far the most a widely used source of energy in the world, and it's going up, as is natural gas. Coal is levelling off a little bit, but a typical 4-mark question here. Remember, you just need to make 2 points and then explain each point. Don't do a list of 4 things, don't do 4 bullet points. It has to be written in a paragraph in proper sentences. If you want to start getting up to A star to A sort of thinking, A star to B thinking, well, is this use sustainable? Is this use of oil, natural gas, coal, can we sustain it into the future? Yes or no? Why? Alright, so that's the sort of thinking you need to be thinking about for the higher grades. Yeah, so sustainable, renewable, non-renewable, fossil fuels, various different types of resources, and the way that we use them is going to change quite significantly in the future. So, for instance, the government at the moment is also weighing up whether we should use more nuclear power to create our electricity, whether we should use more tidal power and wave power out on the coasts, how much we should spend on building new wind farms. So where we get our energy from is an ongoing political concern, and it's something that's going to concern every single government, increasingly so as the years go by throughout your lifetime. So it's important to know the different ways that we can get our energy, and that's what this task here is about. So look back over the task that you did in the lesson, remind yourself of the key points.